Mr. Secretary, first let me say thank you for coming before our committee today, and I want to express my gratitude and appreciation for your assistance during and after the Marshall Fire. As you know, on December 30th of 2021, a fire tore through my community in northern Colorado, the 2nd Congressional District of Louisville and Superior. We lost 1,000 homes and tragically 2 members of our community who perished during the fire. The very next day, you were the first cabinet secretary to reach out to me personally and to convey your grief over the events in my community and to convey your commitment on behalf of the Department of Homeland Security and FEMA to step up for our community when we needed the department. And I just want to say thank you for extending me and my community that courtesy. And we have been working with Administrator Criswell, who of course, as you know, is a proud Coloradan, on the recovery from the Marshall Fire. As you well know, in Colorado and in the Rocky Mountain West, we no longer have fire seasons, but fire years. And we are likely to be besieged by wildfires for years to come. So the partnership between FEMA and our local communities and the state government couldn't be more important. And again, I want to thank you and Administrator Criswell for your cooperation in that regard. Switching gears, I'd like to talk about the threat of cyber attacks. Now, you touched on this in your written testimony and some of your oral testimony as well. During our hearing with FBI Assistant Director Vordman, which was last month, I mentioned that in Colorado, local government entities have been hit by ransomware attacks, as have large organizations like the University of Colorado. And I'd like to talk a little bit, Mr. Secretary, about how DHS is responding to those same threats. As part of the omnibus spending package, Congress passed the Cyber Incident Reporting for Critical Infrastructure Act. As you are aware, I'm sure, the legislation requires critical infrastructure companies that experience a hack to notify CISA in certain cases, including within 72 hours of discovering a cyber intrusion and within 24 hours of paying ransomware attackers. Wondering how DHS is working, number one, to ensure that this breadth of ownership doesn't result in security risks, particularly to our electric grid and water infrastructure. And then secondly, the law does leave some details to be hashed out by CISA via the rulemaking process, and am wondering how DHS is working with companies to ensure that the most essential information is captured.
Congressman, thank you so much. So very quickly, the threat of ransomware has only grown, and we developed in collaboration with the Department of Justice the first ever one-stop shop online to really provide information to the potentially affected and the affected community, stopransomware.gov. And it's really a resource for individuals and organizations of whatever size and of whatever resource to be able to address the threat of ransomware. And we, of course, have our advisors in Colorado and in every state throughout the country. The mandatory reporting legislation is really a game changer for us, and we're incredibly indebted to Congress for passing that piece of legislation. What we are going to implement is the notice of proposed rulemaking, and through that vehicle, through that regulatory vehicle, receive input from industry so that we can fashion the implementing regulations that address the cybersecurity challenge as well as the sensitivities of the business community, because they're going to have to report an incident very well while they are tackling the incident itself. And we want to be mindful of that and also not create a responsibility to report false alarms, which neither they should do nor we should be burdened with.
Well, thank you, Mr. Secretary, and I see my time will soon expire. I would just simply say I couldn't agree with you more about the legislation in particular and it being a game changer. There isn't a business or a local government in our country, in every one of our districts represented on this committee, that is not at risk from the threat of ransomware and cyber attacks. And so, again, the partnership, I think, between the department and local governments and small businesses couldn't be more important and timely, and I appreciate your work and the department's work in that regard.
Thank you, Congressman.